My name is Keith Benny. I'm the Acting Director of Learning here at TIFF. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the TIFF Speaker Series, which is presented in partnership with the Munk School of Global Affairs and Public Policy at the University of Toronto. Together at these extended conversations, we consider some of the political and social issues in the film. We'd like to thank the Munk School for their partnership on this series, as well as to the subject experts for dedicating their time and expertise. If you enjoy learning about contemporary and classic cinema, we invite you to join us year-round here at TIFF Bell Lightbox for our series Books on Film and Real Talk Contemporary World Cinema, as well as a host of special events we do year-round to continue the conversation. Leading the discussion today about incitement, we're honored to have Ron Levy, who's the George Ignatieff Chair of Peace and Conflict Studies at the Munk School. So please join me in welcoming Ron Levy and the Director of Incitement, Yaron Zilberman.
So thank you, everyone, for being here. I have to say this is the second time I've seen the film in 3 days. And so I was texting with a friend of mine on Saturday at the opening, and we both confirmed to each other that the film is a I'm trying to. Is it still on? Good. The film is a kick in the gut. In Hebrew, box babeten, really. And so, if you'll excuse me for just having to catch my breath on this second time. But I want to actually, Yaron and I had a chance to speak just before, and I'd love to get his comments on one part that you haven't seen really, which is the title of the film. The title of the film is Incitement in English. In Hebrew, it's Yamim Noraim, or Days of Awe. And so I want to start right now by asking Yaron just a little bit about that before we go into something else.
But with your permission, before I answer your question, I want to introduce. We have a very, very special guest in the room. So I'd like to introduce her, Dalia Rabin, the daughter of Yitzhak Rabin, the late Rabin. And if we have another chair, I'd love to have her with us on stage. Please, Dalia. No? Okay, so she'll speak to us if we'll ask her a question. So that's that. Yes, okay. And the second is we have the amazing cast here with us. So I just want to introduce them, please. Yehuda, are you here? Not yet. Okay, so we have, please, cast. We have Daniela, who played Nava, the girlfriend, first girlfriend. Amitai Yaish, who played Yigal's father. Sivan, are you here? Sivan Mast, who played the second girlfriend. Margalit Arshefi, the femme fatale. We have here, I think, yeah, absolutely, you're here. Anat Ravnitsky, who played Yigal's mother. Okay, anybody else besides Yehuda who will be here? Okay, so thank you. Now the answer. Yehuda! Yigal Amir in the movie, Yehuda Nahari in real life. My name is Toki. Dalia, boi איתנו, boi. No, Dalia will sit here. I need Dalia with us, so. Dalia. Because we saw you, for 2 hours. Yeah, we're the people behind the camera. We're here for a moment. We have a moment of... all right. So about the name, about the title of the movie. So in Hebrew, it's Yamim Noraim, which means days of awe, but also terrible days. And, these were horrible days. Many would say that they're still going on, partly because we haven't dealt with... the assassination in a true way, in a deep way, in the appropriate way. But anyway, so it's about those days. They were also terrible for all sides. Buses exploding from attacks by Hamas. That's also, of course, part of the terrible days leading into the assassination. But also, it's terrible. The Yamim Noraim also marks the period from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippur. It's a period for religious people of asking for forgiveness, from God, from friends, from the community, and also a soul searching, a period of soul searching. So that was very important for me, that we all do in Israel, a soul searching, and also asking for forgiveness related to that period, to the event. In English, there's no good translation. Days of Awe has only one meaning, so to speak, and it could also be translated in a positive way, which is not the way we want to go with the movie. And also Terrible Days, it's really confining. So I was looking for a name, and I thought, for the incitement would be the right, this is like the main theme. It's one of the main messages of the movie, is to talk about incitement. I think incitement in the world today is so timely that I wanted that to be really the sort of the word that we're going to walk out of the theater with. And also it has to do with, inciting incident, which is a film term that we all writers, directors are like banging our heads. What would be the inciting incident of our story? So that's the incitement, is the inciting incident of this particular story. So that's the reason, and I wanted, so there won't be confusion abroad, those who don't know exactly that I'm 100% against the murder.
So, in fact, if I could bring you then, can you all hear me now? Great. If I could bring you then to the present day, an election coming up, and I don't want to talk party politics, but I do want to talk about the tenor of the current political environment in Israel, which isn't, frankly, so different than the tenor of the current political environment in another very large country due south. And so, but if you look at the news, you see accusations that the media is out to get not only the prime minister, but also the party of Likud. You see accusations that the Arab party Balad had stolen or threatens to steal an election. You see movements toward a possible move toward cameras in the voting booths. You see claims by a member of the prime minister's family, which resonate very similarly to some of the claims that were made in what you refer to as incitement in the film. And so I want to take you in a way to today and to current political discourse in Israel or elsewhere, and the level of intolerance toward institutions like the media, institutions like the schools, or perhaps even the level of intolerance toward different opinions or worldviews. What is that like, either as a filmmaker or as a citizen or as an observer?
It's a great question, and it's that's why I think the movie is so timely. It actually speaks about today, and that's why it was so important and urgent for us to make the movie, because what Yigal Amir did, first of all, was an attack on democracy. When you shoot a prime minister elected, you basically shoot democracy. You are trying to ruin democracy, and in his case, it's to try to have Jewish law, for example, above democracy. So that's what we see, and the same attack on democracy has to do with everything you just mentioned. For example, attacking the media is attacking democracy, because the media functions as gatekeepers, those who needs to watch out for leaders, for corruption, and for all sort of elements that try to rule in a non-democratic fashion. So that kind of attack is attack again on democracy. You mentioned specifically the son of somebody in Israel. That son for me represents, the prime minister basically. And I think the attack might have been related to this movie actually, because, they knew it's coming out. And so they already attacked Rabin. So the trick is, you attack Rabin, you tell your base that Rabin is responsible for all these things that they claimed way back that brought the murder. So it's that kind of rhetoric that they keep on, bringing, so that their base will say, hey, you see this movie, you see the incitement, no, Rabin did all that stuff, therefore he deserved to die, so to speak. That's basically what he's saying, which is horrible. So we're seeing that for a long time. What you said about the booth, it's exactly the same. I mean, taking, using cameras in election booth. It's all about what? They failed. So that's good. An attack on the high courts. It's all part of the same, which means an attack on democracy. So this movie addresses that. Also, it addresses that kind of rhetoric of hate, politics of hate, which means, and you can see that one-to-one, when you have somebody, the head of the opposition in this case, saying that, in so many words that Rabin is a traitor, and I just want to use one language where he says, Rabin and Peres conspired against the people of Israel behind their backs with the PLO, which means with the enemy, in order to attack democracy. So this kind of language is basically, it's almost a dictionary definition of a traitor. And when you say that to your base, who is already prone to violence because of objective things, you have bus exploding, people are dying, it's horrible, it's horrific, the anger is justified. The question is, what do you do with the anger? And in this case, it ignites the anger towards an enemy. And that enemy has a face, and it's a person, and his name is Rabin. And eventually somebody takes a gun and shoots that person. So that's why it's so relevant. When you hear it today, and we know, as you said, in the South, it's where I live right now, the south of Canada.
We don't want it.
It's again, there's this president, and he says certain things about Mexicans and illegal immigrants, but in such rhetoric that makes that like the evil empire is about to corrupt our country, and all this kind of language, and eventually you have somebody going into a synagogue and shooting a community that turn out to be supportive or helping immigrants. So it's just one-to-one. We see that. We try to show the inner working of how that works. And that's what we're seeing. Dalia, do you want to say additional things?
I knew why I don't want to come and sit here because I'm limited speaking about present politics in Israel because of two reasons. First reason is that I am the head of the Rabin Center, which is a national institute supported by any government. And I'm obliged not to be involved in partisan politics. And the second reason is that my daughter is involved in running in this election, so I refrain from approaching what's happening. But other than that, I would like to add one thing to what Yaron said. When my father was assassinated by a religious Jew that was motivated by a religious ideology, all along those years, they used to say, oh, he's just one of a kind. He does not belong to us. We blame you for putting the blame on the whole crowd of the national religious Zionist, the movement. And because of that, we don't want to come to the Rabin Center. We don't want to talk to you because you have put the blame on the whole camp. And he was not representing us. And this movie shows how he was, first of all, he grew in this atmosphere, the home, Bar-Ilan University, his friends. It was the camp that he grew up in and supported him. It shows how he was supported and backed by rabbis that were never dealt directly with concerning the assassination. And just another short comment, 24 years after the assassination, they still put the blame on him for everything. He is to be blamed for everything. We have 10 years of Likud in charge, and still Rabin is to be blamed. So on one hand, It shows his strong charisma and leadership, that they cannot delete it. They cannot ignore what he did for the country and how much, unfortunately, it has changed till today. Thank you.
So I actually want to pick up on something that I just said and switch from the speakers to those hearing it, right? So there's a book. So in the end, I'm an academic, and there's a book, right? There's a book by Diana Pinto called Israel Has Moved, right? And in it, she says, one can no longer speak of a harmonious identity. And she compares Israel of today to the intergalactic cafe of Star Wars, right? Where everyone looks at, right, is speaking differently, etc. And so I want to get to what Dalia was speaking about a little bit, about the social cleavages within Israel. Because, of course, this incitement was out there in the public domain. But what does it say about the social cleavages in Israel that one individual in this case is in an echo chamber where this is, as Dalia says, at Bar Ilan, amongst people who are speaking in a way that he hears this incitement over and over again. When he finds other religious Zionists of a certain type, they shun him on ethnic grounds, right? So in a way, what you have, I'm asking, do you have such a sense of such rigid social boundaries that the capacity to speak across them has been destroyed?
Yeah, unfortunately, it's part of the same discussion that we just had, which is, you have a prime minister, and I mean, Israel is like any other society. Most societies are divided into different groups, sort of, one can call them tribes of different, ethnic background and certain culture differences. And the question is, what do you do with that? You can unite that, all the groups, and find the similarities. And while every group stays unique, which I think it's the best way to go because it's so beautiful that we're different, but at the same time to unite all the groups. And that's something that I felt, Rabin is a good example for doing that. And you had Obama, of course, or you have a leader that keeps on, pounding hatred between groups, not only showing difference, but really magnify it. An example is that I was shocked several months ago. There was a conversation there was a new talk show that I had to see for a reason, sort of, whatever. I was totally against it, and I wanted to see for a moment what's happening there. So there was a conversation with the Minister of Culture, who hates culture with passion, by the way. It's amazing how, again, when you have leaders like that, they just put in every position somebody who hates the people in their department. It's amazing. Like Minister of legal, how you call them, משפטים, of justice, hates lawyers, hate the courts, hate judges. It's all about fighting to ruin your department. It's amazing. But she just started, she said, I hate artists. They're all snobbish, blah, blah, blah. Amazing, amazing. But anyway, here she is for several years doing that. And exactly, so what happened was, I'm listening to the conversation, and she keeps on saying, oh, there's the white tribe, the white tribe. Who's talking about the white tribe? We're all together, we're all friends, we all create together. There's really, the differences are actually beautiful. But instead of that pounding that these differences are horrible, it's that's the culture of hate. Now, why, you ask yourself, why would they do that, right? What's the reason? Why do you prefer people to hate each other than to love each other? And the answer is that that's how they get votes. You know that you cannot get everybody. This is reality. You separate, you say, okay, this is my base. I need an enemy. If I have an enemy, these people would have passion towards a mission. The mission is to make sure that we keep the power, and then you mobilize them into voting. So it's divide and rule, and I think it's horrible, and it's part of what you're mentioning. But deep down, I just want to tell you about the people, the real people. If you take out all that nonsense, people really connect to each other. There's an affinity in Israel. When you speak, you put that aside, there's real closeness and huge respect, and that's what I'm experiencing, and I hope that with the right leadership, and again, I'm not talking about just prime minister, by the way, as you said, There's Bar Ilan, you have professors and teachers and parents. All the gatekeepers in society should come together and, be a positive force for unity. And that's what I hope this movie will help a little bit with that.
So then, so we'll switch then away from the state and away from government and away from the institutions toward individuals. And it struck me even more today than on Saturday that there's a role here of masculinity, of gender, of masculine competition even, right? You have Yigal Amir both revering and feeling competitive with Baruch Goldstein. You have women who are both shunning him and propping him up, both his mother and love relationships, right? And so what is there a commentary here about the role of masculinity in this context?
Wow.
I excuse me, I don't think it's a matter of gender. I think it's another element in his personality that he has this relationship with his mother, then probably has a problem with women at all. And so it's not the masculine problem. Because I don't think we have, I think still all over the world, women are not really equal. Though in Israel, if you look, and I'm not a feminist, and when I said that, entering the parliament, I was almost killed. But I was raised that a woman should make progress based on her own merits. So I think in Israel, if you look at the banks, for instance, and high tech, you have a lot of women in high positions. In this particular movie, I don't think this is the problem of gender, right? You agree with me?
It's not. I agree that it's not a problem of gender, but there is an issue. Maybe it's not about gender, but there is an issue of, in a way, what Yigal sees as an opportunity when he sees Goldstein's funeral, and he sees here's a man who massacred 28 worshippers, and I mean, innocent worshippers. Definitely at that moment, even if one would argue that one of them was whatever planning something, and you see him being hailed as a big tzaddik, as a right a saint. And when you see that kind of worship, again, of violence, act of violence, as if it's in the name of God, he saw an opportunity that he can also be a hero one day with the bullet. Maybe at that point he didn't know where the bullet would go, but it ignites an opportunity to be a hero. And I think that's also talking about responsibility. That's a responsibility of the rabbis, responsibility of social leaders to make sure that when you have something like that, is to call it what it is, which is a massacre. So that's that for me.
In the Orthodox tradition, women are less dominant, but in this case, the mother is very dominant. It's the opposite.
She's running the house. What do you mean
She's
dominant?
running the house. The father is not dominant as the mother. So this is not a typical gender issue.
So turn to the great. So I think we're going to turn to the audience. We have at least two people who've had their hand up since before I started speaking. So do you want me to take them, Keith? Or great. So right to the middle, then 2 rows behind her. So there's a woman right in the middle. So,
in a way that she pushed him to feel inferior because he's Yemenite, because you have dark skin. And I just found well as the complicity of the larger community.
So the question, just to repeat it, though I think you heard it, is it's not only incitement, but there's complicity of family, of others as well.
So, about the mother. First of all, I have the actress here. That's a problem. The problem is, so I'll confess. So now I'm telling you a little bit about directing this movie. The first decision that I made was to have an unwritten contract with all the actors that I will be with them 100% in the movie, in the sense that I will not criticize or judge while making the movie. So it was shocking at the end that now I'm expressing my opinions about all these roles. I mean, Yehuda thought that I'm for the murder while shooting it, while filming it. It was important to get, these kind of performances and authenticity. So that's why we have the mother here. But I will tell you what, I'll start by saying that I think her first mistake was to sort of this admiration towards that particular son, who was very smart and good student, and sort of a really devoted to his studies, Torah studies mainly, and telling him, that he's going to be Yigal Geula Shlema. His name is already, she's already making some kind of a prophecy that, and also huge expectations that he's going to one day save the people of Israel. It's already on his shoulders to be a hero, to be something biblical, on biblical proportion, bigger than life. So she's already doing that now. She might have done that out of love, admiration, all those kind of stuff. But regardless, I think it brought this kind of dissonance, cognitive dissonance between what he achieves in real life and what the expectations or what his mother thinks of him. And then you can close the gap with a bullet. It's very simple. You just shoot the prime minister, and suddenly, for some people, you become a hero. So I think that was a terrible mistake on her part. Excuse me, Anat. Secondly, yeah, you're right about that. This is not only for Yemenites, or it's many people experience that when you have that kind of a notion where certain parents would ignite, again, hate towards different people who not necessarily helping their child succeed, etc. It's like to blame a group of people, and I think that also was in the inner working that you can see in the movie. We learned that while doing the research. We met, actually, our researcher met the family, spoke to the mother, and all these words that you hear are actually a collection of what she said during the interview. So it's not like I just wanted to show the way it is. I don't think it's specific for any ethnic group or anything. It's just an approach. Yeah, I grew up on the drama of the gifted child. So whoever read that, it's part of this process.
So just before I go to the next question, Dalia was co-opted to come up here without notice and has to leave.
She needs to run to the airport.
So I promised, yeah, right there in the back. There you go. Yeah. Oh. Go ahead.
All right.
That's great.
Thank you.
So right over there. Go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. Sure. First of all, it's a matter of interpretations always, right? you have these words and you make interpretation, and the whole idea of the Jewish, thought is about, talking about it, arguing about it, and turning the words and, dissecting into letters and move it around. So there's always interpretation. I did not show the other side, meaning the interpretation where these two laws are actually, one can explain why they don't give any permission. I mean, Jewish justification for killing, and I can do that very, very easily. What I was concerned about, that no rabbi in Israel, no rabbi came out, wrote anything saying, we hear that people talk about the law of the pursuer, law of the informer. Let me tell you something, this is nonsense. You're not allowed to because A, B, C, D, end of story, bye. Instead of that, you had rabbis, many, many, many rabbis within Judea and Sumeria and otherwise, also in Ramat Gan. I read many articles where they talk about, whether there is or not, and what does it mean, and should we warn the prime minister before, so he knows that the laws are applied to him if he continues with the Oslo Agreement. All I read was sort of a positive wave for somebody like Yigal Amir. That's all I read, and I was shocked not to find a single letter, a article, anything, radio or otherwise, that says we hear that talk, we hear everybody's talking about it. It's a no-go. Okay, and I can explain why these rules don't apply. It's very easy, very, very easy. But they actually said that they apply. That's why I feel that there was a Gzar Din Mavet?
A death sentence.
A death sentence on Rabin. That's the way I interpret it in the most extreme way. I'm sorry, but that's what I learned in 6 years of research. There was basically a death sentence. They were just waiting for somebody to do something. Because, and excuse me for that statement, but I'll tell you why. Because, in the Bible, the land of Israel was given by God to the Jews, right? I mean, and it's specified what it is. And if you give part of it for peace, in this case, you are wrongdoing God. And that ignites that whole conversation. So we were waiting, in a way, for somebody to come out and say, there's a justification that you allowed, basically. There was one rabbi that said that for a while, and then also stopped saying that peace is more important than land. There was one very important one, and after a while he also stopped saying that too. So I think that, but in that, I just want to say one thing so it will be clear and not confusing, that I said that in the premiere 2 days ago. I love Israel. I made this movie because of my love of Israel. I'm, of course, Jewish. I'm proud to be Jewish. And so all of that has nothing to do with that. It's about being very critical to people, I think, a major part of society that acted, in my view, in a non-Jewish way. That's really what it's about.
So I've been told we're out of time. So I just want to say one quick thing as we end. One thing we know in social science is that for personal trauma to become cultural, it needs to be talked about and spoken about and shown. And I think what Yaron has done masterfully here, along with those involved in the film, is to make this part of ensure this continues to be part of a collective conversation that now I think everyone here has been part of too. So let me just turn to Yaron for last comments, and then we'll end.
Yeah, so I want to use the last comment, actually, it's related to the question, because I don't think I finished saying that for me, the father represents that aspect of no violence. And he said that very clearly, and that's what I liked about his statement. He says, even if these laws apply to him, the law of the pursuer and law of the informer, which basically is a death sentence, even only from God. God is the only one who will do that, not a human being. We're not allowed to do that. So I showed actually through the father, a whole perspective of love, the neighbor as you love yourself, and the whole, I think, beautiful aspect of Judaism. So the father did that for me, as opposed to a rabbi who will tell him, why not?